Cold Open, Springfield, Missouri, June 7th, 1992. Before sunrise, a quiet residential street held a mystery that would endure for more than 3 decades. 3 women had disappeared from the same home. Their vehicles remained outside. Important personal belongings had been left behind. Even the family dog was still inside. Yet there was no confirmed explanation for where the women had gone, or why all 3 would leave without taking the things they would ordinarily need. Investigators believe they disappeared sometime between approximately 2:15 and 7:30 that morning. No confirmed witness saw them leave the house. None of the 3 women has been seen since. This is case file number 1, the Springfield Three. Cheryl Levitt was 47 years old. She lived in Springfield with her daughter, Susie Streeter, better known as Susie, and worked as a cosmetologist. The home from which they disappeared was not an abandoned building or an isolated cabin. It was an ordinary house surrounded by neighbors, yards, sidewalks, and familiar streets. Susie was 19 years old and had just completed high school. Graduation was meant to mark the beginning of a new stage in her life, new opportunities, new responsibilities, and plans extending far beyond that summer. Stacy McCall was 18 and one of Susie's friends. Like Susie, Stacy had been celebrating graduation on June 6, 1992. It should have been a weekend remembered through photographs, graduation programs, family celebrations, and plans for the future. Instead, it became the last weekend their families could account for them. It is important to remember that Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy were not characters in a mystery. They were 3 real people with families, friendships, routines, and futures that mattered. That is what was lost when the ordinary events of graduation night turned into one of America's most enduring missing person cases. On June 6th, Springfield's graduating students attended ceremonies and celebrations across the city. Susie and Stacy spent part of the night visiting friends. Their plans changed as the evening progressed. Something entirely normal during a busy graduation weekend. The young women reportedly considered staying at another friend's home. Eventually, however, they decided to spend the night at Susie's house. Cheryl was already living there. According to the official timeline, Susie and Stacy returned to the residence at approximately 2:15 in the morning on June 7th. That is the final established point before all 3 women disappeared. There is no verified recording of what happened after the young women arrived. No confirmed witness has publicly described an argument, an emergency, or a planned departure. There was no message explaining that the women had changed their plans again. Somewhere between their arrival and the following morning, an ordinary night became an unanswered question. What happened during those hours remains unknown. Later that morning, friends came to the home expecting to meet Susie and Stacy. At first, the scene did not provide an obvious reason for alarm. The vehicles were still outside, suggesting that the women should be nearby. But no one answered. A glass globe from the porch light had been broken. The detail would later attract considerable attention, but its significance has never been conclusively established. It may have been connected to the disappearance. It may also have been an unrelated accident. Treating an unexplained detail as proof can make a mystery appear clearer than it really is. In this case, the broken glass raised questions, but it did not provide an answer. Inside, the home reportedly appeared largely undisturbed. There was no immediately obvious scene explaining why 3 women had vanished. Many ordinary possessions remained where they had been left. Their purses were reportedly still at the residence. Keys, money, and other personal belongings had not accompanied them. The family dog was also still inside. The scene did not resemble 3 people preparing to leave for an extended period. Friends at the residence also reported receiving disturbing telephone calls. An answering machine message was reportedly erased before investigators could preserve or evaluate it. Because that message no longer exists, no documentary can honestly claim to know what it contained or whether it was connected to the disappearance. These details became part of the mystery, but they did not reveal where the women had gone. The house contained nearly everything expected to be there, except Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy. When the women could not be located, law enforcement began investigating. But before the home was understood as the center of a major missing person case, visitors had already entered it. Objects had been handled, people had moved through different rooms. Portions of the property had reportedly been cleaned. No one entering the house that morning knew the importance it would later hold. Their actions were not malicious. Nevertheless, the movement of people through the home made reconstructing the morning more difficult and may have reduced the value of evidence that could otherwise have been preserved. Investigators interviewed people connected to the women and followed information received from the public. Searches were organized. Photographs of Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy appeared in newspapers, television reports, and missing person notices. The case drew attention far beyond Springfield. The central question appeared simple. How could 3 women disappear from the same home without leaving a confirmed trail? Over the years, investigators received numerous tips and examined different possibilities. But tips are not the same as evidence. Suspicion is not proof, and a theory repeated many times does not become a fact simply because it is familiar. No publicly confirmed explanation has accounted for every important element of the case. There has been no verified public discovery showing precisely when the women left, how they left, or where they were taken, if they were taken at all. That absence of reliable evidence is what allowed so many competing theories to develop. The possibilities discussed in this chapter are unproven. They are not findings of guilt, and they should not be treated as conclusions about a specific person. One possibility is that the women opened the door to someone they recognized, or to someone who gave them no immediate reason to feel threatened. Supporters of this possibility point to the reported absence of an obvious forced entry or a major visible struggle. But an absence of visible damage does not establish who came to the house. It does not even prove that someone approached the front door. Another possibility is that the women were quietly forced or deceived into leaving. A threat could potentially explain why important belongings remained inside and why the house appeared relatively undisturbed. Yet no publicly confirmed physical evidence has established this scenario either. Investigators have examined people and events connected to the women's lives and to the surrounding area. Over time, names, alleged confessions, suspicious vehicles, and possible burial locations have circulated through news reports and public discussion. Some locations have been evaluated or searched. None has produced a publicly verified discovery resolving the disappearance. That distinction matters. A possibility may be worth investigating without being suitable to present as truth. In an unsolved case, Accuracy requires accepting the limits of what the available evidence can support. What is known is narrow. What remains unknown is enormous. The established timeline remains remarkably small. At approximately 2:15 a.m., Susie and Stacy returned to Cheryl's home. By approximately 7:30 that morning, the official disappearance window had closed, 5 hours and 15 minutes. Somewhere inside that window is the event or series of events that explains the entire case. Did someone come to the house? Did the women leave together? Was their departure voluntary for only a moment before circumstances changed? Or did something happen that investigators have never been able to reconstruct? The evidence available to the public cannot answer those questions. The vehicles remained. The belongings remained. The dog remained. What disappeared were 3 people and the information necessary to explain why. More than 3 decades later, the Springfield Three remain missing. Authorities continued to seek credible information capable of establishing what happened after Susie and Stacy returned home. Missing person cases do not become less painful simply because time passes. For the families left behind, every unanswered year extends the same uncertainty. Hope and grief are forced to exist together. The disappearance of Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall is remembered not because the women vanished from an extraordinary place, but because they disappeared from somewhere that should have been safe and familiar. An ordinary home, an ordinary street. The morning after a celebration, 3 women, 1 house, a window of 5 hours and 15 minutes, and more than 30 years of silence. Until credible evidence reveals what happened, the final chapter of the Springfield Three remains unwritten. This was Story of Dark Chapter. Anyone with credible information should contact the appropriate law enforcement authorities.